Welcome, everybody, to the NHL Weekly Show on the Really True Sports Network. I'm your host for the NHL Weekly Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Sam McGinnis. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing good.
Just good?
Just good.
Just good. All right, that's better than just bad. All right, let's
That's
look
true.
at some of our hot topics from the NHL. Frederik Andersen's injury and how this will affect the Maple Leafs, especially, you get the new trade, Jack Campbell, Kyle Clifford. What do you think about the Maple Leafs here? Is this a season ender for them, or is this something that could survive?
It definitely could be a season ender because Jack Campbell, yes, good goalie, but still a backup goalie, the same as Hutchinson is. Now he's going to be more consistent than Hutchinson, but the problem is they just lost their starting goaltender, and that can be a killer to any team season because that's the most important player on the ice. They could still make it, but it's going to be a lot tougher now that they're missing their main goaltender.
Yeah, and they're still 1 point behind the Panthers, 2 points behind the Philadelphia Flyers for the second wild card spot. And Michael Hutchinson definitely didn't look like a answer to this question, as he allowed 4 goals on 34 shots in a 5-3 loss to the New York Rangers. Will they make the playoffs?
Again, it's much harder now, and they can't beat the Panthers either. They've proven that consistently that they have a hard time beating them. Just because of the Frederik Andersen injury, I would say this. If Andersen is out for a month, they won't make it. If it's less time than that, I would give them a much better shot. He is day-to-day as of now.
Well, isn't this just more about just the goaltender? Because also you have the Maple Leafs defense.
Yeah, it definitely needs some help. And Cody Ceci, we just found out, got injured. Now, that doesn't make really much of a difference because Cody Ceci is terrible. But they have had
Oh,
consistent
that's
injuries to
mean.
an
Come
already
on.
bad.
Don't talk about Cody like that. He's in the NHL, Sam.
He is in the NHL a whole lot better than I am, at least. But for the NHL's caliber, he's not great.
All right, I get you. We're coming up on the trade deadline, and we haven't seen anybody do anything yet, but I think there's still teams trying to figure out whether they need to go all in for this, and I think that we're going to see this heat up over the next few days. Who do you think is most likely to go big at the trade deadline?
I think the Oilers will definitely want to go big. I think the Islanders as well, after being kicked off by the Blue Jackets and just a little further back in the standings, are going to want some reassurance. The Flyers might. That depends on whether they think they can really succeed in the playoffs with this core, which I think they can, so they might go big as well. As for other teams, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Maple Leafs go for another trade here. They made their bigger one now with Jack Campbell, as we just got done talking about. But a lot of Pacific teams, I would also bet, would go pretty big on this trade deadline.
Which ones? And what do you think their biggest needs are?
I would think the Arizona Coyotes already had their big splurge, and that was with Taylor Hall. They might go again, but I wouldn't think so. I would more think, as I mentioned, the Oilers and probably the Flames, and both of them are probably going to go for offense, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Chris Kreider go to either one of those teams.
All right, and that basically it then? Do you think there's going to be a lot of activity by the trade deadline, or do you think this is going to be calmer?
I think it'll be pretty big because there are a lot of teams that do need a little bit of bolstering, especially in the Pacific and maybe a little bit in the Atlantic on the Maple Leafs and Panthers front. But and I also think, of course, the Metropolitans, some of the lower teams, as I mentioned, the Islanders, Flyers, and maybe the Hurricanes, if they still think they have a shot, which they do, they might go pretty big as well. And there's a lot of things to be sold, like Chris Kreider. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this being one of the bigger trade deadlines we've seen.
All right, and then, of course, we got to talk about the Battle of Alberta because you don't always get to see a good goalie fight. Plus, Cassian and Tkachuk going at it again. When we look at Calgary and Edmonton, I think they've only got, one game left with each other, and it could have big playoff implications. What do you think about the Battle of Alberta? There's always been bad blood between the Oilers and the Flames, and is it good for hockey or bad?
I think it definitely gets ratings up. I think it's certainly good for hockey. I was kind of actually sad that I missed the goalie fight because I didn't get that channel, unfortunately. I had to watch it on a highlight. That made me sad. But yeah, definitely a very big rivalry. It's been very tough. There's been fighting and cheap shotting and all the kind of dirty blood you'd expect. But the thing is, both of their last games are against each other. that's the last game for both teams. And because of how close they are in the standings, that could determine home ice advantage.
Yeah, and when we look at the standings with the Oilers and the Flames, the Oilers are, 2 points up? So there's two teams between them, and the Golden Knights and the Coyotes. But still, I think this is going to go down to the wire with those guys. And that's a playoff matchup I'd like to see, though, Sam.
Yes, that would be quite the playoffs. And if you can, I would tune into that last game of the season, especially, like I said, if it determines who gets home ice. That will be a great game to watch, and I wouldn't be surprised to find more fights in it.
Yeah, well, hopefully there will be, because everybody likes a good fight, Sam.
Well, yeah, and those teams hate each other enough. I wouldn't be surprised that every single game they met that someone would be in a fight.
Well, see, when I was growing up, 70s and 80s, fighting was encouraged. You get to see at least one good brawl every game.
Yeah, it was definitely more so. The NHL has been a bit more strict about that recently.
Yeah, so wouldn't you say men were just tougher back when I was growing up?
I would say so. At least on the ice hockey front.
All right. Another big rivalry that's just getting started and kind of has the division hanging in the balance is Pittsburgh and Washington also.
Yeah, because they've still got 3 or 4 more games to play because they haven't even played each other until very recently on Super Bowl Sunday. They always have a game then, but that's the first game they've played all season, and they're closer in the standings. This could really, their games against each other could determine the division, and they're big rivals, met each other in the playoffs many, many times. We always know the Alex Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby story, so this could get very heated as time goes on.
Yeah, and if you look at it, the Capitals have a 6-point lead, basically 3 games, but as you said, they still play each other enough where the Penguins could make up the ground. Will they make up the ground, Sam?
I think it's quite possible, mostly because of Tristan Jarry. I mean, we saw game 1. They won 4-3. Goaltending was good there. I think it all comes down to whether he's in net during that time. And if he is, I would say they've got a decent shot at it.
All right. You also look at the Metropolitan Division. The Columbus Blue Jackets continue to come on 8-1-1 in their last 10 games, 67 points now. Any outside chance they could make a run at the Caps?
I think it'd be hard, but they have one-upped me so many times, I'm not going to say it's impossible.
Yeah, they have made you look bad so far, Sam.
They have. I'm not going to lie. It all started with me believing in Tampa, and it's just gone downhill from there. They have gained my trust.
All right, so when we look ahead to the playoffs, what are your greatest possible playoffs matchups for each division? And let's just start off with the Atlantic Division.
I think the Atlantic Division, one I'd love to see, is Tampa Bay Lightning and Toronto Maple Leafs. Frederik Andersen versus Andrei Vasilevsky would be a nice goaltending matchup. They both have very powerful offenses. Tampa Bay has them on the defensive front, but I think it'd be a very big shootout, lots of highlight reel kind of material you'd see from that series, and a very interesting one to watch.
All right, what about the Metropolitan Division?
Metropolitan Division, I would actually like to, now this is more unlikely, but I'd like to see Washington and Pittsburgh again. Always a good rivalry to watch, but especially because of the goaltending that the Pittsburgh Penguins have now gotten, and with Alex Ovechkin having the monkey off his back, I think it would be a very good 7-game series.
What about Washington and the Islanders, possibly?
That'd be a good series, too, especially since it would be Barry Trotz versus his old team. So, yeah, that would be a good matchup.
Yeah, that's why I would like to see it. Plus, just the way the Islanders play to see if that defense would be enough to get past, Ovechkin and the Capitals.
Yeah, it would be a bit harder, but if there was anybody that could do it, it'd probably be that defense.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the Central, which the Central is loaded. Blues, Stars, Avalanche, Blackhawks are in there. The Predators still have a chance. Hell, everybody has a chance damn near here. The Jets are at 57 points. Even the Minnesota Wild are at 54 points, and they're above 500. What would be your matchup you'd most like to see in the Central?
I think it's one we will see, and I think it'll be Stars Avalanche. Because here's where I get into this series. It's going to be the current best offense versus the current best defense. That is going to be fun to watch, and they're both overachieving teams. We mentioned this a few weeks back. They're both have characteristics of beating teams that are better than them. So I would not be surprised if this was very similar to the Stars Blues series we saw last year, where it was Game 7, double overtime, very good series, and it'd be hard for me to pick who would win that.
Yeah, and the thing about it is so closely matched in the way the teams play. Both have a style where if they get through that matchup, you could see them make a deep run.
Oh, absolutely. I would see them both as Stanley Cup contenders, whoever won that series. And since it's so likely that it could happen, I would tune into that more than any other series in the first round.
All right, Pacific Division for me is an easy pick, but who would you have?
I definitely have the Battle of Alberta. I don't know how you couldn't. It'd just be so much fun to watch, especially since it's so competitive. But on top of that, the absolute heated rivalry that it is, it would only get more intense through the playoffs with everything on the line. So I don't know how you couldn't pick that here.
All right. What's your take on the new NHL team in Seattle?
I didn't love the name. I'm not going to lie.
What was the name?
I think the location is Kraken.
Kraken?
Yeah, I'm not joking.
Kraken?
Yes, you heard me correctly.
Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, I'm still a little. I'm not digging that one. It's better than Sockeyes, though. That was the other option.
I don't know. I think Sockeyes might be better.
They're both bad. It's like the Ducks.
They could have been the Seattle Totems. I think the Anaheim Ducks kicks the crap out of the Seattle Krakens.
Man. Yeah, I think the NHL sometimes has a hard time getting good names for its teams. They do have some that are pretty good, though.
Why Kraken?
I don't know. Maybe it's because they're next to the ocean, because it does have to do with a mythical ocean monster, so.
Okay. Yeah. The Kraken is the name of a mythical sea monster that destroys ships. Reportedly has been one of the most popular possible monikers circulating. The fans wanted this, but it was never believed to be a finalist until it was. So the Seattle Kraken. I don't know.
Hey, we'll still probably get a rivalry between them and Vancouver, so that'll be fun to watch at least.
The Canucks and the Kraken. Kraken the Canucks. This is stupid.
Yes, it is.
It is. I mean, it's Seattle Kraken.
You really hung up on that.
Yeah, this is stupid. The Seattle Kraken. All right. So what's a Kraken look like? What's the logo going to look like?
I don't know. I haven't seen the logo. I'm pretty sure it has, I could be wrong because I don't know a lot about the creature, but I'm pretty sure someone mentioned to me that it has a lot of tentacles of some sort. So, I don't know. He sent me a picture that looked like a large squid.
All right. Of course, I have to find out something about this after this. So, and it seems like here we go. I just found a Kraken, and yeah, I have verified that it looks stupid. It looks like it has Nordic origins, though.
Yeah, I heard that. It's like a mythology of some sort.
Yeah, which means it's a myth and not true. But we're going to go ahead and name a team the Kraken. Maybe we could just do a show about the Kraken and what a Kraken is.
That might be an interesting one-off there.
Well, legends say that a fearsome Kraken can devour a ship's entire crew at once. And it looks just like an octopus to me from the pictures I see.
Or maybe an entire Canuck.
But the thing is this, the Kraken is perhaps the largest monster ever imagined by mankind. In Nordic folklore, it was said to haunt the seas from Norway through Iceland and all the way to Greenland, Sam.
Well, there you go. Wait, hold it. That's the wrong side of the ocean. That's the other ocean.
That's what it says. It says the Kraken had a knack for harassing ships, and many pseudoscientific reports Hold on here because I just had a pop-up come up. Including official naval ones said it would attack vessels with its strong arms. If this strategy failed, the beast would start swimming in circles around the ship, creating a fierce maelstrom to drag the vessel down.
Yeah, so let me get this straight. They named a team off of a mythical creature that's on the other ocean that is not near them.
Yes, they did.
Oh boy.
Now, the history of the Kraken goes back to an account written in 1180 by King Sverre of Norway. And as with many legends, the Kraken started with something real based on sightings of a real animal, which turned out to just be a giant squid. Now, for the ancient navigators, the sea was treacherous and dangerous, hiding a horde of monsters in its inconceivable depths. And any encounter with an unknown animal was then called a Kraken. There you go. I can already see the Seattle Let's Get Kraken t-shirts now. All right, that's way too much time.
We'll hold it.
Kraken. What? Go ahead.
Hold it. That may have been... Yeah, so they still have 13 final names. It's not their official thing, but it was put up by their mayor by mistake, so we'll see.
Well,
they better not.
Not the Kraken. But hopefully it is now, since we just spent the better part of our show on it. All right, NBC Sports Network showing hockey games a lot more recently, Sam, so now you got more stuff to do at night.
Yeah, I started noticing how their schedule was not 1 or 2 games a week, but nearly every single day. It improved my day because now I don't have to buy anything to watch additional games because it's been hard because I've only been able to watch a couple a week. Now I can watch one almost every night. And it's increasing in viewership, too. I believe last year they had something like per night for NBCSN. It was like 313,000. It's like 347 now, or 447. Yeah. So it's definitely increased.
All right. Plus, you can always, for $4.99, buy the ESPN Plus app. You get, I think, like 4 or 5 games a week there, too.
Yeah, they have at least one every night, I believe. My friend was showing it to me. It looked very helpful, but if NBCSN is going to do this, I don't need to.
So basically, you're just cheap's what you're telling me.
Yes. Yes, okay. I'm very cheap.
All right. Next up, the Chicago Blackhawks. I don't think we thought we'd be talking about this, but can goaltending take them to the playoffs?
It could. I was watching Robin Leonard last night, speaking of NBCSN. It was on at the time for Wednesday Night Hockey. He was exceptional. And Corey Crawford hasn't been bad in his own right. Both of them together could potentially, as we've talked about in the past, when goalies get hot, they can really help carry teams places, especially in the playoffs. But in this case, it could help carry them to the playoffs at all.
All right, so we have some listener questions again, and once again, every week you can send any listener questions to me or Sam at Grueling Truth. You can direct message it or just tweet it out to us. But we've got Isles Fan 29 who wants to know, do you see anyone that the New York Islanders could target at the trade deadline?
As I mentioned, Chris Kreider. I think it would be a good option. Now, I know that's like death. You're not supposed to like Rangers to Isles. That's not a thing you're supposed to do. But I think Chris Kreider would be a good option. They need some additional forwards. They've got the goaltending. They've got the defense. I think Chris Kreider or maybe Tyler Toffoli would be good options.
All right. I think Jean-Gabriel Pageau, I guess that's how you say his last name, but I've seen him play. I just can't pronounce his name, at the Ottawa Senators. I think he is the most versatile of the group of guys they could get. I think he could play center or wing. And on the power play, he could play on the penalty kill. He'd be the player I would be targeting if I was the Islanders, Sam.
Yeah, it comes down to which player. It comes down to value versus cost at the end of the day. Are they willing to pay for Chris Kreider, or are they going to go for more of what you're talking about and pay a little less?
Yeah. All right, next up we have from Crush City. If the Toronto Maple Leafs fail to reach the playoffs, what's next for GM Kyle Dubas? I don't know. You always got to figure there's a chance they're French. Could we see a blockbuster trade?
Potentially, but I don't think so. I think the number one thing, regardless of whether they make the playoffs or not, that they need to fix is their defense. It's why they haven't gotten as much as they have anywhere. Frederik Andersen is good enough at goalie, and their offense is outstanding. The thing they're missing is the defense. They tried to do that last year with Jake Muzzin. It hasn't been enough. They definitely need to bolster the D. However they're going to do that doesn't matter too much because it'll be worth the cost. Because they've got an offense. Even if they trade a big name, they're still going to have an offense. So I would take defense over all the offensive players that they have now.
Well, see, I think make or miss the playoffs. I think the Maple Leafs are going to undergo some changes in the offseason, especially on defense. You got Tyson Barrie, Cody Ceci, Jake Muzzin, who are all going to be unrestricted free agents. So if nothing else, I think by the end of the season, you're going to see a big change in Toronto, especially on the defensive side, Sam.
Yes, you definitely will. And part of the problem that they can't get a defense is because of the massive contracts they've given out to their offensive players like Austin Matthews. It's going to be hard for them to get a defense, but I think the only way they can have success is by getting one, and their current core isn't getting it done. So I wouldn't be too upset as a Leafs fan to see a lot of your current defensemen go.
All right. At Wild Minnesota Hockey has a question. I bet it'll be against the Minnesota Wild too, Sam. And it is.
Yeah, I think so.
Who do you see the Minnesota Wild trading away at the deadline, or will you just say it makes more sense for the Wild to wait until the summer?
I think they're going to go bold and actually keep what they've got now. I think that's a bad move, but I think they will because of how close. I know it's a bit further than they'd like to be, but because they're even in the realm of playoff opportunity, in the past they've been more keen on trying to push for that. And they've been first-round dropouts quite a few times, as we've seen as a result of that. But I think they'll hold on to their current core, if not maybe Zucker grows. If not, they'll wait till summer and see what they can't get for him.
Yeah, and I think the Wild here don't have to be in any hurry to make any trades prior to the deadline unless they want to big-time bolster those chances at the playoffs. They're just 6 points out of the second wild card in the Western Conference. But I think for the Wild to be active around the deadline, it must be of trades that won't benefit them just for this run. But I think they're looking for something that will benefit them for the future because this is a team that only has one unrestricted free agent when this season's over. And I think the Wild are set up that if they're just patient and do everything the right way, they might be a team that could be a contender in the next year or two.
Potentially. It's been harder for me to trust them, but I could see that, especially if they do get one big trade and get a first-round draft pick or a second-round draft pick. They could get also some youth for the future like you were talking about. So I could potentially see that. It's 50-50 for me, though.
All right. At Hey Peter, we have a question. How close are the Canucks to being Stanley Cup champions or Stanley Cup contenders to be Stanley Cup champions?
I think they're actually a whole lot closer than most people think because they've been a bit of a surprise this year, but they're young and they're very competitive. They've got a lot of talent that, although is not totally proven yet, they've proven themselves enough that I can see them going further than some people expect. And although I don't think they'll hang on to that division lead, I think they'll upset a couple of teams in the playoffs, and they have the potential for Stanley Cup. For a victory, that would be harder for me to see, but they do have potential to go very deep, so I'm not going to rule it out.
Well, I think the thing that I'd really want to see is more consistency from now to the end of the season. I think they're a team that doesn't really have the kind of experience or ability to be able to hang with a team like St. Louis right now. And I would put them a little bit below the Avalanche and Stars also. But, as you said...
Well, yeah, this is the difference, is the entire Pacific Division, including the Canucks, have been very inconsistent, and all those teams that you just mentioned, I think there's not one team in the Pacific that I could see beating one of those top three Central teams. So that's where I'm like, I think they could probably win their division in the playoffs, but I would see a hard time for them to get past a Blues or a Stars or an Avalanche.
Yeah, and the good news for them is they play 16 of their final 28 games at home, where they've won 9 straight or 17-5-3 this season. So I really kind of almost expect to see them win their division. Maybe win a round in the playoffs, lose in the second round. That fair, Sam?
Yeah, I think that's fair. They're still a young team. They've got a lot of potential. So fortunately for all the Canucks fans out there, you're going to have a window here that's going to be a bit longer than just a year or two.
All right, Sam. That's all the questions we have for today.
Oh, they were good.
All right. right. Well, we want to thank the listeners and make sure that you send those questions out for next week's show for the listener mailbag. And I would just like to say it was a fun show, and the Seattle Kraken better not be their real name. But
It better not. I looked at the finalists. I think that was just the mayor making a mistake because I didn't see in the final names the Kraken anywhere in there. I could have missed it, but I think that might have just been a mistake.
But there are still articles that I have found on here that makes it look like that is the pick. So hopefully it's not. Hopefully it was just a miscommunication.
Yeah, I hope so because that name is terrible.
But I can tell you this: if you punch in Seattle Kraken, there are logos for it.
Well, there you go.
So it's possible. It is very possible. But all right, Sam,
You're saying that so upsettingly.
Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at SamuelMcG22 on Twitter or Instagram, and I'm on Facebook too. So anywhere you want to look there, and if you have questions for me, I'm more than willing to hear, and suggestions as well.
All right, guys, you can follow me at Grueling Truth. You can also hear me at the bottom of the hour at 3:30 if you want to hear a little Indiana basketball talk with myself and Ken Sterling, where we will break the first story that Bobby Knight will be at Assembly Hall for the Indiana-Purdue game on Saturday. So make sure you check back there for that. But for now, for Sam McGinnis, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.